You get home after spending time with some friends, nothing unusual happened, nobody argued, nobody seemed upset. It was just another conversation. You kick off your shoes, brush your teeth, get into bed, turn off the light. For a few peaceful seconds, everything is quiet. Then your brain decides it's time. Not to think about tomorrow, not about work, not about what you're having for dinner. It chooses one sentence, something you said. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a story. Maybe it was just the way you answered a simple question. Suddenly, why did I say it like that? You replay it, then you replay it again. This time you imagine a better answer, a funnier answer, a smarter answer, an answer that makes everyone laugh instead. Now you're wondering if they noticed how awkward you sounded, if they secretly judged you, if they walked away thinking differently about you. 10 minutes ago, you were ready to fall asleep. Now you're having a conversation with people who aren't even there anymore. The strange part is, you know this isn't helping. You know you can't change what happened, but your brain keeps pressing play anyway. If you've ever experienced this, you're far from alone. Almost everyone has replayed a conversation long after it ended. But here's the part most people never ask. Why does your brain choose that conversation? Out of hundreds you've had this month, why that one? And why does it feel impossible to let it go? Because beneath this everyday habit, your brain is trying to solve a problem. The only issue is, it might be solving a problem that doesn't actually exist. You probably don't replay every conversation you have. In fact, you've already forgotten most of the conversations you had last week. You don't replay the cashier asking if you wanted a receipt. You don't replay telling someone what you had for lunch. Your brain quietly lets thousands of ordinary moments disappear. So why does it keep returning to that one? The conversation where you stumbled over your words, the joke that landed awkwardly, the moment you weren't sure how someone reacted. It's almost as if your brain has its own highlight reel, but instead of your greatest hits, it prefers your greatest doubts. And here's what's strange, the conversation doesn't even have to go badly. Sometimes the other person smiled. They laughed. They hugged you goodbye. Everything seemed completely normal. Yet hours later, your mind starts searching for hidden meanings. Maybe they were just being polite. Maybe they laughed because they felt awkward. Maybe I talked too much. Without realizing it, you become both the detective and the suspect, searching for evidence that something went wrong, even when there isn't any. The truth is, your brain isn't looking for the most important conversation. It's looking for the most uncertain one. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable, your brain would rather invent an answer than leave a question unanswered, even if that answer makes you feel worse. And once you understand why your brain hates uncertainty so much, everything about these late night conversations starts to make sense. Here's the mistake most people make. They think their brain is replaying the conversation because something is wrong with them, that they're too anxious, too awkward, too sensitive. But what if the opposite were true? What if your brain keeps replaying conversations because it's trying to do its job? Think about it like this. Imagine you touch a hot stove. Your brain remembers it, not because it wants to ruin your day, but because it wants to stop you getting burned again. The same thing happens in conversations, except there's no physical pain. There's social pain. For thousands of years, being accepted by the people around you wasn't just nice to have. It could mean the difference between survival and being completely alone. So your brain became incredibly good at asking one question. Did I do anything that might make people reject me? That's why it zooms in on tiny moments. The pause before someone answered, the look on their face, the joke that didn't get the reaction you expected, the sentence you wish you'd said differently. To your brain, these aren't random memories. They're lessons. It's running through them over and over because it believes it's helping you avoid making the same mistake again. In other words, your brain isn't trying to embarrass you, it's trying to prepare you. The problem is, your brain can't always tell the difference between a real social threat and a harmless moment that only feels important because you keep thinking about it. So it treats both the same. It presses play, again and again, and every replay convinces you the conversation must have mattered, because if it didn't, why would your brain keep bringing it back? And that's where the real trap begins. Because the more you replay a conversation, the more important it starts to feel, even if everyone else forgot it hours ago. Have you ever noticed something strange? You can have 10 great conversations in a day, and one awkward moment. Guess which one your brain remembers? Not the compliment someone gave you, not the person who laughed at your joke, not the interesting conversation that lasted an hour. It goes back to the 5 seconds that felt uncomfortable. It's almost unfair. Your best moments quietly fade away, while your worst ones seem to get replayed in high definition. But there's a reason for that. Imagine two people walking through a forest thousands of years ago. One notices the beautiful sunset, The other notices the movement in the bushes. Which one is more likely to survive? Your brain learned a very simple lesson. Pay more attention to potential danger than pleasant moments, because missing something good usually isn't a problem. Missing something dangerous could be. That survival instinct is still with us today. The only difference is, for most of us, the danger isn't a wild animal anymore. It's the fear of saying the wrong thing, looking awkward, being judged, or feeling rejected. So your brain treats an embarrassing conversation like it's something that needs to be studied. It zooms in, rewinds it, analyzes every word, not because it enjoys making you uncomfortable, but because it believes there's a lesson hidden somewhere inside it. The problem is, most conversations don't contain a hidden lesson. They contain something much more ordinary, normal human imperfection. People interrupt each other, they misspeak, they tell jokes that don't land, they say things they wish they'd phrased differently. Everyone does it, but when it's your own mistake, it doesn't feel normal, it feels permanent. And the more attention you give that memory, the bigger it becomes. Almost as if your brain is saying, if we're still thinking about this, it must be important. But importance and repetition aren't the same thing. Sometimes, the only reason a memory feels so significant is because you've replayed it 100 times, and that leads to an even bigger illusion, one that's quietly affecting almost every conversation you have. Here's something that's surprisingly difficult to believe. The conversation you've been replaying all day may have already been forgotten by the other person. Think about it. How many awkward things has someone else said to you this month? Can you remember them? Probably not. Not because they never happened, but because your brain isn't paying as much attention to other people's mistakes as it is to your own. Everyone is busy starring in their own movie. They're worrying about what they said, what they look like, whether they sounded awkward, just like you are. Imagine two friends having the exact same conversation. They both go home. The first person spends an hour wondering if they talked too much. The second person spends an hour wondering if they sounded boring. Neither one realizes the other person is doing exactly the same thing. It's almost funny when you think about it. Two people, both convinced they've embarrassed themselves, while neither of them is actually judging the other. Our minds have a habit of placing us under a spotlight that barely exists. We assume people notice every pause, every awkward laugh, every sentence that didn't come out quite right. But the truth is, most people are too busy thinking about themselves to analyze you the way you analyze yourself. That doesn't mean nobody ever notices when we make mistakes. Sometimes they do, but even when they notice, they usually move on much faster than we imagine. Because just like you, they have their own conversations replaying in their own heads, and that's the real irony. The thing you've been carrying around all day might not exist anywhere except in your own memory. But there's one final piece to this puzzle. If knowing all of this is true, why do so many people still keep replaying conversations anyway? Because understanding something and changing a habit are two very different things. At first, replaying conversations feels harmless. It almost feels responsible, like you're learning from your mistakes, trying to become a better friend, a better partner, a better person, and sometimes you are. Reflecting on a conversation can help you grow. The problem is, reflection has an ending. Rumination doesn't. Reflection asks, what can I learn from this? Rumination asks, what if I never stop thinking about it? One helps you move forward, the other keeps you standing still. Without realizing it, you start changing the way you speak. You hesitate before telling a story. You think twice before making a joke. You replay sentences in your head before saying them out loud. Not because you're becoming wiser, but because you're becoming afraid of getting them wrong. And that's the hidden cost. The conversations you're replaying today can quietly shape the conversations you have tomorrow. You become more cautious, more filtered, less spontaneous, not because that's who you are, but because your brain has started treating every conversation like a test. The cruel irony is, the harder you try to avoid saying the wrong thing, the more self-conscious you become. And when you're constantly watching yourself, it's much harder to simply enjoy talking to people, because instead of being part of the conversation, you're monitoring yourself from the outside, checking every word, every pause, every reaction, almost like you're trying to predict the future before it's even happened. But conversations were never meant to work that way. They're messy, unpredictable, full of interruptions, awkward pauses, half-finished thoughts. That's not failure. That's what being human sounds like. So if replaying conversations isn't the answer, what is? How do you actually stop your brain from pressing play without pretending you don't care what people think? The answer isn't to silence your mind, it's to teach it something new. The next time your brain replays a conversation, don't ask yourself, How do I stop thinking about this? Because the harder you try not to think about something, the more your brain treats it as important. Instead, ask a different question. Have I actually learned anything new from replaying this? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe you interrupted someone too often. Maybe you realized you weren't listening. Maybe there really is something worth improving. If so, great, you've learned the lesson. Now your brain has done its job. But if you've replayed the same conversation 20 times, and every replay ends exactly where the last one did, you're no longer learning, you're looping. There's an important difference. Learning moves you forward. Looping keeps you trapped in yesterday. Imagine watching the same movie every night for a month. The first time, you notice new details. By the 10th time, nothing changes. You're just watching the same scenes again. Your thoughts work the same way. Eventually, your brain isn't discovering anything. It's simply repeating itself. And here's something worth remembering. You don't have to answer every question your mind asks. Sometimes your brain says, what if they think you're awkward? You don't need to solve that question because there isn't always an answer. And that's okay. Real life is full of uncertainty. Some people will misunderstand you. Some conversations will be awkward. Some jokes won't land. That's part of being a person. Not a problem to eliminate, just a reality to accept. Ironically, the moment you stop demanding perfect conversations, you usually start having better ones because you're finally paying attention to the person in front of you instead of the critic inside your head. And that leads to one final thought, one that completely changed the way I think about these late night conversations. So tonight, you might get into bed, turn off the light, close your eyes, and once again, your brain might decide to replay a conversation. It'll rewind that sentence, that awkward pause, that joke you wish you'd told differently. It may even convince you that if you think about it just a little longer, you'll finally find the answer you've been looking for. But this time, I hope you remember something. Your brain isn't replaying the conversation because it's broken. It's replaying it because for thousands of years, remembering social mistakes helped people survive. It's doing what it was designed to do. It's just using an ancient survival system in a modern world. Because here's the truth. Most conversations don't need to be solved. They just need to be lived. Some will be awkward. Some will be unforgettable. Most will be forgotten, including the one you're worrying about right now. Life isn't built from perfect conversations. It's built from thousands of imperfect ones. The people who matter won't remember every sentence you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. And chances are they've spent far more time worrying about themselves than judging you. So the next time your mind presses play, pause for a second. Ask yourself, am I learning something? Or am I just replaying it? If you've already learned the lesson, you don't have to keep serving the sentence because the conversation's over. And maybe it's time to let your mind leave it there. The conversation ended hours ago. Your life doesn't have to end there too. If this video helped you understand your own mind a little better, then that's exactly why I created Human Theory. Every week, we explore the hidden psychology behind the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that millions of people experience, but very few truly understand. So if you're curious about why your mind works the way it does, and you want to understand yourself a little better with every video, I'd love to have you here. Subscribe to Human Theory, and I'll see you in the next one. Human Theory. Understand yourself a little better, one video at a time.